Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 16, The Half-Elf Godkin. So, Ainz continued to think. Why did it look like Decim believed the enemy's, words without a doubt? Did he really not have any abilities that could see through invisibility? If he had any, it should have crossed his mind that Ainz suddenly appearing was not because he was summoned, but because he was hiding using something like invisibility. If he really didn't, then he was probably a specialized druid like Mare. Or, in case this was all an act and he knew I was already here, a bluff in a sense, what is he aiming for? He wanted to simulate what he would do if he was in that guy's place, but spending too much time pondering on it would look suspicious. Then why don't we fight one-on-one, fair and square? That should make it easier for my masters to understand who is stronger, you or them, right? Decim widened his eyes and laughed like he just heard an interesting joke. Meanwhile, Ainz used the silent metamagic to send a message to Mare. Mare, that was a big lie just now. If it looks like I am in a bad situation, cooperate with me to absolutely that guy. Pass that along secretly to Aura as well. Obviously, he had no intentions of handing the twins over to the guy. Also, fighting one-on-one, fair and square in a fight with one's life on the line, was an act of utmost stupidity. Some battles were fine to lose, but not those where people were trying to take each other's lives. But Ainz felt like he had made a mistake. He wanted to spend a little more time buffing himself, but there was no way he would let a pervert like that touch Aura. The elf also could have had skills to force teleportation that Ainz didn't know about, which would have been dangerous if he had let him touch her. The sight of you two commanding an undead, made me sure that you are my grandchildren. Then, the floor moved. Like waves receding back from the beach, the soil roiled towards Decim. Ignoring it, Ainz took out a scroll from under his clothes with deliberate movement and activated it. It was extremely wasteful, but he had no other choice. Until he knew how much the opponent knew, he couldn't let the enemy get cautious. The activated magic was the 8th tier spell, Dimensional Lock. This spell had the same effect as the special ability used by extra-dimensional beings like devils and angels. It blocked beings from teleporting out of a specific range with instant teleportation magic. While he was doing this, the earthen lump that coalesced before Decim turned into something huge. It was in the form of an elemental that Ainz knew. He could hear a gasp of surprise from Mare, but Ainz was surprised as well. A primal elemental. Upon seeing the elemental that couldn't be summoned by normal means before him, Ainz instantly raised his level of caution. Unlike Mare, Ainz suppressed his sound of surprise from leaking out. One of the fundamental teachings of King for Dummies was that you couldn't let others find out that you knew. Mare's surprise could be misunderstood as a kid's terror of seeing the elemental, but in Ainz's case, it would make it clear that he had knowledge about it. So Ainz lowered his shoulders in an exaggerated manner. So what? You created a big lump of soil called an earth elemental. Are you going to make it fight me instead of fighting by yourself? Aren't you underestimating me? Horu. So you know what this is? Decim smiled haughtily. Good. Of course. That's just an earth elemental, right? I destroyed one that was summoned against me in the past. Well, that wasn't nearly as large as the one here, so you should be quite strong to be able to control one so large. Size is one of the marks of strength after all, but size is not everything. Yes, you are correct. Dragon lords who only have their large bodies to speak of can be defeated by elves after all. But I am surprised. Your knowledge is not incorrect. You were right that this is an earth elemental. Hahaha. You're discerning, no memory. I would bow to it. Decim's clearly scornful grin deepened further. This is a rare chance, so why don't you take a blow with your body? A blow, from an elemental you call trivial. The primal elemental slowly raised its fist. It should move faster if it was a primal earth elemental. Was this intentional? Well, I am thankful for it. Its behavior, like a cat playing with its prey, was a welcome thing for Ainz. Isn't this the best? While hiding his smile, of course, his face wouldn't move in the first place, Ainz tried to recollect Primal Earth Elemental's abilities. The Primal Earth Elemental that was over level 80 played the tank role among the Primal Elementals of the same level. No, fundamentally, all Earth Elementals filled the same role. Its attacks were considered to have nearly all of the metallic attributes under its level to be included in them. For example, if beings like Lupus Regina who had a weakness against Silver got hit by it, it would trigger that weakness. Also, as long as both the opponent and itself stood on Earth, it would have a bonus to all of its stats, even though meager. But that shouldn't work now as the original floor that was exposed after all of the soil had collected near Decim was made from plant material. It also supposedly had the ability to hide in soil, but that couldn't be used here either. All things considered, he could say that this was not a good battlefield for the primal earth elemental. What he should be on guard for were the punches from those fists. It was a simple way of attacking, but it was highly destructive. They were not exactly fast or precise, but it was hard for a backliner like Ainz to evade them. Furthermore, it does bludgeoning damage, which was particularly effective against Ainz. It could also extend its arms like whips and do long-range attacks, but in that case, its power would go down a lot. Just like its attacks, its defense was also supposed to have metal attributes imbued. It also had weapon resistance 5 against all weapons and physical damage reduction on top of that. Considering all of the above, it was the ideal tank and was troublesome to deal with using only physical attacks. That said, it also had some weak points, naturally. For example, it didn't have any dangerous trump cards, that is, it had no special skills. That meant that it had no attack that could turn the tide in a battle. The other weak point was that everything that worked against metallic attributes worked the same on the elemental. Hero-san could probably take it down easily. It was weak to acids and there was one more element it was weak against. Ainz made preparations to take out the staff from his inventory when needed. He wouldn't be taking it out yet though. Since the opponent was assuming that he was just a simple undead, he should play along and not display any skills that would put him on guard. The question was whether or not he should take the incoming hit or not. It would make for a good act if he made it look like that single attack was what made the undead being realize that this was no simple earth elemental. The demerit in this scenario would be that the enemy would turn cautious after seeing that one serious blow wasn't enough to kill Ainz. Right. There's no doubt that he is specialized in summoning. The earth elemental's attack will be more powerful than usual. It will be disadvantageous for the fight hereafter if I receive damage for no reason. In that case, what I should be doing here is Wall of Skeleton. Ainz created a huge wall made of bones in front of him at the same time the elemental brought its fist down. The wall was instantly destroyed and disappeared into thin air. As I expected, did his mana just go down? Well, what is this? Ainz exclaimed in a voice loud enough for the elf to hear. Why can it destroy my wall in a single hit? Hahaha. To think it was broken in a single hit from a simple earth elemental. Isn't your wall too brittle? Taking advantage of Decim's good spears, Ainz immediately shot a spell at him. Lopsided Duel. This was a third-tier spell that made the caster teleport to the same place as the person he cast it on, if they tried to escape by teleportation. Furthermore, even if the opponent was protected by delayed teleportation, it would still ignore it and instantly teleport the caster at the same time. Still, this obviously had a fatal weakness. If the opponent teleported right into the middle of his comrades, the caster who followed them would also teleport to the same place, and would end up as their punching bag. That was why, even though it looked like an extremely useful spell at first glance, it was relegated to the third tier. Before it was patched, it could be cast on allies to teleport along with them. After it was patched out, the spell could only be cast on enemies. So, Ainz should be prepared to escape if there were people on the same level as Decim, waiting at the place he would teleport to. Luckily, Lopsided Duel had the small mercy of not taking the enemy along with the caster, if it was the caster, who used teleportation instead, so it would not be that difficult to escape. What did you do? I cast an instant death spell. I see, so you already have measures against instant death. Well, it looks like you are somewhat intelligent, so you tried to deal with me, after seeing that you can't win against Behemoth. But, do you really think that I am weaker than the elemental? Summoners being weaker than their summons is impossible in Yggdrasil, but you are probably the lower leveled one here. Keeping that aside, why didn't he answer my question even though he is looking down on me as a weakling? Is it because he really had no anti-instant death measures? And what is this Behemoth? Decim jerked his chin, making the primal earth elemental lift its fists again. It was far quicker compared to the last time. He could also hear Decim cast a spell at the same time. Mercy of Shori Robusta. Tis. His use of 10th tier magic was within my predictions, but that's a really troublesome spell. Now I will have to use twin metamagic to kill him. Mercy of Shori Robusta was a 10th tier spell, and its mana consumption was one of the highest among them, on the level of reality slash. This spell had 3 effects. First, for a limited period of time, it would gradually recover HP. However, the recovery rate was trivial, and so it was hard to call it useful for people at this level range. The second one was absolute immunity against instant death. There were far better spells in the third tier if one only wanted to acquire resistance against instant death, but there was a reason why a lot of druids learned this spell despite that. That reason was the third effect, which automatically resurrected the target when their HP reached 0 and died. This would not cause a drop in levels from resurrection. The trigger condition of HP going to 0 made it useless against deaths that weren't caused by damage like those by drowning, but it was still a very useful spell. Priests had resurrection spells that wouldn't cause level loss if they were cast right after death. Druids also had spells like Phoenix Flame, but many used this spell to cover for any careless mistakes. That said, they would be at low health upon resurrection, so they were very likely to die anyway after a few hits. Still, there were a lot of cases where people were saved by this spell. Incidentally, it could avoid death from Ainz's ultimate skill. The goal of all life is death, as this spell was considered resurrection magic. In that case, however, the spell would end even if there was still some active time left. It was because the spell was dispelled after it activated the resurrection portion. He is probably guarding against my bluff about using an instant death skill. I made a mistake. My bluff should have been about some magic I can't use. Let's do that next time. Triplet magic, Wall of Skeleton. As he expected, the first wall was destroyed with a single attack, and the second wall soon followed. While the third wall was obstructing Decim's view, Ainz slightly changed his position, took out a scroll, and activated it. Piercing Cacophonous. It was a buffing spell that he didn't really need right now, but he used it just to be sure. Primal Earth Elemental attacked again. The Wall of Skeleton shattered and Triplet magic Wall of Skeleton. At the same time the first of the 3 new walls he created was being destroyed, he heard Decim chant a spell. Aspect of Elemental. It's an 8th tier druid spell that gave resistances similar to the elementals. It gave immunity towards bad statuses like poison and disease. Other than that, it also nullified critical hits and attacks with similar effects. There was also a similar spell in the 9th tier named Elemental Form. The areas Ainz specialized in were being mitigated one by one, which was troublesome. That said, how much of his mana can I exhaust? Triplet Silent Magic, Greater Magic Seal. Ainz changed his position a little more. With this, he had moved 90 degrees. From his initial position with Decim as the center, he was now closer to the stairs. The Primal Earth Elemental destroyed one more wall. Unfortunately, he couldn't make new walls of bone right now. Triplet Maximize boosted Silent Magic, Magic Arrow. His mana went down by a lot instantly. Naturally, even a low-tier spell would consume a lot of mana after being strengthened by 4 metamagics. If this Primal Earth Elemental was a summon, all it needed was a single, successful Greater Rejection, and he wouldn't need to prepare all these spells. However, if Decim really was specialized in summoner classes as he assumed, it probably wouldn't succeed in dispelling the summon, even with their large level difference. Plus, Greater Rejection could only dispel summons, not creations. Could it be an elemental adjutant? If it was created by sacrificing experience, it could be maintained nearly forever. But it looks like he was consuming mana to maintain it, so that shouldn't be the case. I can't really gamble on it though. Then, he should also be prepared for that possibility. Fina. Decim stopped speaking, looked at the twins, and then looked at Ainz's position with a puzzled expression. Why did you move over there? Are you planning to escape while calling yourself their guardian? Tis. Hahaha. Then let me lend you a hand. The Primal Earth Elemental landed a punch on Ainz's defenseless back as he ran towards the stairs. The knockback caused by its gigantic fist blew Ainz away. Whew. To think you weren't smashed in a single blow, it stands to reason why you would talk big. Well, your resistance was futile in the end anyway. Ainz was sent flying away, but he managed to keep his posture with fly, and took his position before the stairs. But seeing that you are running away, can I assume that you are going to leave your masters behind with me? There's no way I would do that. Ainz created another wall of skeleton. That again. How do you even expect to win without damaging my elemental? That is an idiotic plan you got there. Upon hearing Decim's exasperation-filled voice, Ainz returned a sneer from behind his wall. Hahaha. I know that humans are assaulting this country right now. Hey, Elf King, don't you think time is on my side? I see. So that's how it is. Aren't you clever? But that's meaningless. Your plan's impossible. What? Impossible, you say? Yes. Did you perhaps think that something like humans could take me down? Me, the one who controls this elemental. I was exasperated at similar words I had heard from the guy who summoned an angel in the past, but the Primal Earth Elemental is truly a top-class being. Is the Theocracy attacking while knowing Decim's strength? If that's the case, it means that they have a method to defeat him. Yet, this guy looks like he hadn't even thought of that possibility, yet. Either the Theocracy is ignorant, or this guy is. But, if the Theocracy really knew Decim's strength, would that person at that time really have called it the highest angel? It's unsure what he thought about Ainz contemplating silently, but Decim spoke in an utterly fed-up voice. You should have probably understood it if you thought about it a little bit, right? You really are such a shallow person. Well, maybe it can't be helped. You are an undead after all. All you have is air for brains. I don't know. If they are prepared for a fight with the elves, it stands to reason that there's someone in the Theocracy's camp on the same level as this guy at the very least. In that case, time really isn't my ally here. I want to avoid consecutive battles, but how much of his opponent's energy could he exhaust?